Pat. For your benefit, I just quickly want to go through our interview process so you'll know what to expect. I know you've been here before, so probably no big surprises. Thank you for joining us today for your interview for an opening on the Arizona Game and Fish Commission. We're excited to learn about your background and why you're interested in applying for this position. Before we begin with the questions, we would appreciate it if you could provide us with an opening remark and a brief background about yourself. This will give us a better understanding of your qualifications and motivations for seeking the role on the commission. Following your opening remark, each of our recommendation board members will have the opportunity to ask you a question of their choosing. They may also ask you a follow-up question if necessary. We believe this will allow us to gain a comprehensive understanding of your skills and experiences. After the first set of questions, we will proceed with the second round where each board member will have a chance to ask an additional question. Towards the end of the interview, you will have an opportunity to provide a closing remark. Please keep in mind we've allocated 45 minutes for this interview. If we're running short on time with the second set of questions, we'll end them and give you time for a closing remark, which is important. Once your interview is complete, you're welcome to join the remainder of the meeting, or you're free to leave if you desire. Once again, thanks for being here. We look forward to hearing more about your qualifications and why you're interested in joining the Arizona Game and Fish Commission. So with that, if you'd like to kick it off with an opening remark.
Thank you, Chairman Kelly, members of the board. Pat Headington, Yuma, Arizona. I am a lifelong human, lifelong Arizonan, something of an anomaly in this day and age, in that I'm the second of 3 generations in my family to graduate from Yuma High School. So needless to say, we kind of own the place down there to a certain extent. I grew up hunting and fishing in the southwest corner of Arizona. Deer, hunting and bass fishing with my dad and brother. That's just how we grew up. And after moving on a little bit, I've had the opportunity to hunt literally and fish many, many corners of Arizona. I've enjoyed it so very much. Once I became a member of the Yuma Valley Rod and Gun Club, I slowly began working my way into the activities that the club is involved with, including those with the Arizona Game and Fish Department, waterhole projects, habitat projects, all of those kinds of things, and just becoming more and more involved even today with the department and working with the department to move things forward, conversations and such. It's, why do I want to do this? I want to do this for the benefit of Arizona's wildlife, not just for today, but the next generation. So that my kids, my grandkids, our grandkids can enjoy what we have on the landscape today. That's what this is really all about. My qualifications, I'm sure you've all read my resume. 20 plus years in construction, including that of starting as a framer, working my way up to a licensed residential general contractor, project manager, then moving over to the county, where I somewhat of a governmental role, retiring a week ago tomorrow.
Wow.
After 24 years as the chief building and fire code official for Yuma County. Pick up a lot of good things along the way in how government works. Spend a lot of time watching how the commission works, the department works, and honestly think I can be a benefit for the average sportsman on the landscape. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll close my opening remarks and hand it back to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Headington. Great opening remark. We appreciate it. John, do you want to kick it off with your question again?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Headington, my first question for you regards Department of Habitat Policy. Over the last decade or so, the Commission has weakened its stance on wildlife and habitat conservation. For instance, the words, quote, conserve, enhance, and restore Arizona's diverse wildlife resources and habitats through aggressive protection and management, end quote, were removed from the department's mission. and replace with the words, quote, "to conserve Arizona's diverse wildlife resources," end quote. In 2022, last year, the commission changed their policy on habitat loss from requiring the department to seek, quote, "compensation at a 100% level when feasible for actual or potential habitat losses," end quote, to instead directing the department to seek all opportunities to identify and implement conservation measures. My question to you is, should the commission again direct the department to aggressively conserve, enhance, and restore the state's wildlife and habitats, or is the current policy language okay with you?
I think my response to that question, sir, is in light of the assault, if you will, from outside entities on our habitat and resources, I would personally like to see the commission take a more aggressive approach to maintaining habitat or incorporating or including some sort of mitigation efforts into particularly solar projects as these projects are moving forward. Yuma Valley Rod and Gun Club just finished yesterday, just blocked a special use permit by the Yuma County Board of Supervisors to approve an almost 4,200 acre solar project in Yuma County on state trust land. We cannot allow the continued loss of habitat in Arizona on the landscape. That was our position. That is our position. So yes, I would like to see the commission and the department take a more aggressive approach to establishing mitigation efforts and protecting the habitat that we have. It cannot be replaced, and we cannot refurbish it once it's lost. It will take hundreds of years if it can be refurbished at all. I hope that answers your question, sir.
Thank you, sir.
No follow-up?
Mr. Chairman, no follow-up.
Thank you. Rich?
Pat, thanks for your interest still and coming back to talk with us again. Much appreciated. You stole my first question. I appreciate your thoughts on solar farms and wind farms. But if you would, tell us then what do you think are a couple more important issues that are going to face the commission in the next 5 years?
Some of the things that I believe the commission faces within the next 5 years, of course, revenue streams are always going to be at the top of the list, and maintaining those revenue streams, particularly with Arizona's political climate in a constant state of change. The eastward migration, if you will, of folks off of the West Coast, that will be a constant challenge. The balancing act of managing wildlife in an ever-growing and expanding urban or rural environment is going to be a challenge for the commission and the department also. And I recall, I'll go back and just recall an event. It's been a few years ago, the commission had the challenge on contest hunting. They came primarily out of central Arizona, and they had to make some decisions on that. And they did. They took an action that they felt was appropriate to identify what that is. 6 months later, you have folks in the Scottsdale area, the northern Scottsdale area, complaining about wildlife, mainly coyotes, predators, coming into those neighborhoods and picking up their dogs and cats and pets for dinner. So this is just one, those are just a couple of the balancing acts that I see facing the department and the commission is how do we balance those in an ever expanding and political climate, and just get people to understand that they're moving into an area where wildlife is, and you have a responsibility to take care of your own animals. Some of the other things that we're going to be facing are the ever-increasing environmental responsibilities that are handed down to us from the federal government. We saw some of that come to fruition with some proposed revisions to the rulemaking on live bait this past year. The Yuma Valley Rod and Gun Club was very active in working to mitigate some of those. So to me, those would kind of be the top three, if you will, that I would see the commission and department facing, sir.
Thank you. I have no follow.
Thanks, Rich. Pat, my first question for you. The role of all successful commissioners is to help develop effective strategies to manage Arizona's wildlife in the best ways possible. In order to do this effectively, a first-hand knowledge of our state's diverse wildlife is invaluable. Could you please elaborate on your life's experiences relating to our state's wildlife, as well as your interest in hunting, fishing, bird watching, or other non-consumptive outdoor activities?
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. For me, I have been so fortunate to be able to access Arizona's public lands for hunting and angling and the waters and all. The deer hunting and such that I've been able to perform down in the southwest corner. Dad wanted to move to some of his old haunts back around Wickiup when he and his younger brothers were up there hunting, who coos deer hunts over in southeastern Arizona, elk hunts in central and northeastern Arizona, predator hunts. Most of my fishing has been related to or focused down in the southwest corner along the Colorado River corridor. We have done some trout fishing up around Springerville and some bass fishing up around Springerville. A lot of people don't know there's bass up there. Then had some fairly good success with it. Some years ago, some of you may remember Commissioner Joe Melton, who unfortunately we lost here in July. But some years ago I rode a trap line with Joe and enjoyed watching his works and harvesting of predators for fur and stuff. So that's kind of my hunting experience and fishing experience. Some of the non-consumptive uses, it's some of my greatest times and enjoyment is simply going out in the desert, setting up a camp, and you get ready to lay down and go to sleep at night, and you look up and you see nothing but a big sky full of stars. And all of a sudden, everything that's going on down here gets real, real small. And that, to me, is one of the most enjoyable times that I've had. After hunting 41 in one particular area in the East Arm most all my life, a few years ago, we found a fishhook cactus growing out of the top of a boulder, probably 12 feet above the ground. And this little fishhook cactus was just tremendous in size, unbelievably large. 3 years later, along comes the drought, and we go back into that same area and look for that little fishhook cactus, and the little rodents and everything have devoured that poor little thing as a result of that. So it's one of the things that we've lost in our area, because it was one of those little gems that we knew about. We would always just kind of go take a look at it and just see if it was still there. But honestly, just to get out in the field, spend that time in the field as that non-consumptive user, just being out there and enjoying it, enjoying the colors, the wildlife, and the time with my family. That's what it means to me.
Great, thank you. Pat, your turn.
Thank you. Well, this might fit in with your announcement about your retirement that I'm still going to ask. A major key to having an effective 5-member commission is having every member attend and participate in every meeting. Given your current occupation, which is retired, I'm sure, and other obligations, you're able to fulfill this tremendous commitment of time to serve the commission.
Actually, Mr. Madden, thank you for that question. While I have retired from Yuma County, I am unfortunately too young to quit. Dang it. And the insurance, medical insurance, as we all know, is just far too pricey for. So I have accepted an offer to start work for a private firm November 27th of this year. I have talked with my employer and do have the time and stuff necessary to delegate to this responsibility if I am so fortunate to be selected.
Thank you. One follow-up.
Sure.
Thinking of wording here. The commission travels a lot throughout the state. Usually, I don't know if it's currently or not, but every other meeting we had in a community, all over the state. Will that affect your new position?
No, sir, I don't believe so, because my new position may likely take me to other corners of the state than Yuma. There's already some conversation about a post up here in the Metro Phoenix area. So it's going to move me around quite a little bit as water training and such goes. My biggest concern as far as the travel goes is finding a vehicle that I can sit in comfortably. And in one of my first conversations with Commissioner Brake, and coming into an interview such as this, if you are successful, you need to go buy yourself a Prius. And I can appreciate his recommendation. However, after all my years in construction, you try and fold me in half and put me in one of those little cars, you just literally have to unwrinkle me to get out. So that's going to be my biggest challenge.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
No further.
Norm?
That's what pickup trucks are for. Pat, thank you for applying again and being here, and more importantly, for your lifelong service to wildlife in Arizona. Can you describe the landowner compact program?
My understanding of the landowner compact program is agreements established by the department with ranching cattle owners throughout the state. I believe there's a dozen of them included in the compact that established a set of rules that we all need to follow as far as courtesy and travel and littering and respect for the wildlife and the infrastructure that these ranchers have created and maintained on this landscape. Though there are some penalties set up for those who violate that, including the loss of access and a temporary loss of access and a possible permanent loss of access. All of this is just to protect those relationships with these landowners, the investments they have in their infrastructure, their ranching infrastructure. I support those. They're 100% necessary in order for all of the public to maintain access to these lands. It's my understanding, sir.
Do you think that program should be expanded or sounds like you think it's worthwhile, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but do you have any ideas on how it could be expanded or pushed forward?
Off the top of my head, no. I would have to give that some thought as to how we could move something like that forward. I'm not sure if there are other ranches that would be open to having those conversations, or possibly even some larger landowners, private landowners, that would be interested in having those conversations. But certainly the responsibilities of those traveling into newer areas and to maintain that infrastructure remains, whether they're a part of this compact or not.
Thank you. Thank you, Pat. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
John, you want to proceed with second question, please?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. Pat, my second question for you regards commercialization of wildlife. Wildlife is a limited resource that has the potential to create profit when used for commercial enterprise. In general, market hunting and fishing practices of the past are practices of the past, but there is still a lot of money spent on sport hunting and angling. Do you believe the profit motive can negatively impact the North American model of wildlife management? And if so, what practices do you see as a threat to that model, which we should never accept here in Arizona?
So there's, I think my response to that would be, there's a lot of conversation currently ongoing within the commission about the commercialization of wildlife. And truly, to a certain extent, it's a double-edged sword in that it does create a significant amount of revenue for the department, probably somewhere between, on average, maybe $2.5 million for these auction tags and that. Is that in line with the North American model and opportunity for all? That's debatable, and I think that really is the debate. Does everybody have an opportunity to bid? Yes. Does everybody have the pocketbook to bid? No. And that's where, in my mind, the opportunity for all really kind of comes into play. The challenge is going to be finding a mechanism to meet, in my mind, the intent of the commercialization, the non-commercialization of wildlife that's in the North American model, while salvaging the revenue stream that this current use brings to the table. One thought that could maybe do that is have an open-ended lottery similar to the draw that we have today, but allow unlimited entry for each of those tags. Now, it truly is a lottery process, opportunity for all. Will it generate the same amount of revenue? That would be tough to determine, and I would leave that to department staff to try and sort out and figure out for us. So in a nutshell, I think there are some changes that we probably need to make to bring current practice more into line with the North American model. That there's also a concern along with money, is there's a lot of groups that rely on these funds and this current opportunity for bidding to generate additional funds for their organization and their habitat projects that they kick forward. So we have to keep that in mind moving forward at the same time. Everybody has to be able to come to the table, and this has to be a win for wildlife, for conservation, for the department. That's the challenge that I think we would face in that particular, addressing that item.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate your thoughtful answer.
Thank you.
Good, John?
Yeah,
Okay.
no problem.
Thank you. Rich?
Pat, recently the state of Colorado has begun a program to introduce northern gray wolves into their state. What concerns might this pose for the Mexican gray wolf program in Arizona, for the Arizona Game and Fish Department and its partners in that program?
Mr. Williams, I think the biggest, the issue that I have heard and would resonate would be maintaining the biological separation of the two. The Mexican gray wolf being a separate subspecies of the wolf, and the ability for those two to come together, and now all of a sudden we're mingling those two biological entities together, and we've got a hybrid animal on the landscape. I do believe it has been documented that we have Mexican gray wolves above Interstate 40. They're not great numbers. There's a challenge, keeping them. The goal is to keep them below I-40, and I don't know that that's a goal that's truly attainable, because we're just not going to have the ability to control where these animals move on a daily basis. They're in search of food, habitat, cover, as any other predator would be. That would be I think that would be the biggest concern I think the department would have, is just being able to maintain that biological separation. It's the one I'm most familiar with, sir.
Thank you.
Pat, my second question for you. Arizona's blessed to have a large number of non-governmental organizations, NGOs as we call them, dedicated to the conservation of big game animals as well as fish and bird species. The volunteer work performed by these NGOs not only supplements the effort of the Arizona Game and Fish personnel, but it also brings in serious matching funds for programs like Pittman Robertson. What are your feelings on their contributions, and what volunteer work have you been involved with related to wildlife NGOs?
Well, Mr. Kelly, this comes back to also one of the questions that Mr. Wins asked, and that involvement of the NGOs and those wildlife organizations. For myself and the Yuma Valley Rod and Gun Club, just last year we built 3 new waters and rehabilitated a 4th up near Quartzsite. We've done a lot of water hauling this year, and we do every year depending on the amount of rain we get. A lot of conversations on water hole construction currently going on and the updates to that program and those plans. So we have had some meetings with those folks trying to keep doing what we're doing down in our corner of the world, seeing as how we get a grand total of 3.5 inches of rain every year. So it's tough to capture water that you simply don't get. I've not been involved with any of the relocation projects. Those have all been during the week for the most part, so I haven't had an opportunity. But the work of the NGOs and the amount of match funds that they bring to the landscape for the department is critical for the department to maintain its budget as well as its day-to-day operations. If I recall from some of the presentations, the non-governmental organizations bring the equivalent of an additional 60 personnel to the landscape for the department. And that is a tremendous number of staff that you don't have to pay, that show up willingly every day to work and take on the task at hand. And to lose those dollars is I don't know of any other way to say it, just can be tremendously detrimental to the department, as well as those partnerships. Those partnerships are probably even more, maybe just as valuable as those dollars. Hope that answers your question, sir.
It sure does, Pat. Thank you. Go ahead, Pat.
Thank you. Pat, tell us about how you see the role of commissioners in interacting with department employees and pushing objectives.
Ooh. Well, the last time I checked, the commission has 1 employee, and that is the director. So any conversations as far as game and fish staff and directives or any of that has to go through the director. I mean, we can have conversations and cordial and casual conversations with staff, but as far as directives and anything, policy, all of that has to go through the director. It must. If the commission's not happy with the director, then that's a whole different conversation.
Thank you, Pat.
Yep.
No, please.
Okay. Thank you. Norm?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you name some of the benefits of allowing grazing on public lands?
Some of the benefits that I am aware of grazing on public lands is a shared resource for wildlife as well as livestock, a reduction of fuel loads, helping to mitigate wildfire, and providing additional job opportunities for the ranchers and those folks who operate those. Those are the 3 that come to mind right off the bat, Mr. Freeman.
Thank you. And do you have any ideas on how you would determine, Pat's question, how would you determine if a director is being effective? And as a commissioner, hopefully, and not the commissioner.
Well, hmm. That's a tough one. That is a tough one. I think for me, it would just be having some conversations with the director and sharing philosophy with how, in my role with Yuma County, I built a team. And I was so fortunate to have the team that I developed and worked with and that came to work for us, that we communicated well together, we worked well together, and relied upon each other. That's how I would see the role of the director and the commission. So we need to develop that relationship, and I can't speak for the commissioners currently and the relationship they have, but that's what I would like to see moving forward as far as a relationship with the director and this individual, should I be so fortunate to be a commissioner.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Norm. Do any of the other board members have any more questions for Pat? Looks like we're done with our second round. Pat, you want to give us a closing remark, and you've got plenty of time, looks like.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I just want to thank you for this opportunity. It's always a pleasure to come before you and talk with you folks. I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed working with the department and will continue working with the department on the challenges that lie in front of us, water holes and so many other things, regardless of the outcome of this application. So I want to thank you for your time and your service to Arizona and Arizona's wildlife.
Great. Thank you, Pat. Appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pat.
Does anybody know if we've got Jim Guggenauer available? Looks like we can move on to our final interview. Thank you.